I just want to say this ahead of time. There'll be spoilers for Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Mandalorian, Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars Resistance, and in this video. Hey guys, this is Adilon, and I'm going to talk about a topic that has been on my mind a lot recently. I started to think about it a lot more, and it is the fact that Dave Filoni is overrated. I know this is a controversial opinion. I know just that title alone is controversial, but I just want to explain my thoughts on why I think Dave Filoni isn't as great as everyone says he is. Because, at least for me, most people treat him like he's a god, which I wouldn't even say is close to true. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna talk about this TikTok that I got tagged in for saying Dave Filoni's overrated. And yeah, I know I have TikTok. Don't please don't execute me. I have a good reason why I don't have it. But back to the point, I'm gonna show you why exactly I think that this TikTok should be addressed in it, and it brings a bunch of the major points for the tick for in this one TikTok on why Filoni's overrated.
That's what I thought you said. Now let me offer this as a rebuttal.
Alright, so first of all, I want to talk about how Clone Wars as a whole is overrated. Because that was the first, and that's, I feel like, is the most controversial point. I'm thinking that Clone Wars overall is overrated because I'm not saying that Clone Wars is bad. I'm not saying that Clone Wars is bad, but it's just not all great. I mean, like, you have to agree. Seasons 1 and 2 weren't that great at all. And even the Clone Wars diehards agree with that. But I mean, people just dismiss that as not Dave Filoni because it's not good. But they shouldn't do that, and instead should talk about how Dave Filoni did do that, but he's still good or something like that. But people just dismiss it like it's not even a fact, or most of the time. And then second, there's also season 7, which I know that a lot of people liked, but I'd say it's probably as bad as seasons 1 and 2 to be honest. Because there's only one arc that was actually good, in my opinion, and that was the Mandalorian arc. Because one arc was about autism clones. I mean, who wants to learn more about clones with autism? That's basically what the Bad Batch is. There's nothing different between that and autism clones. And then after that, they had the Sisters arc with Trace and Rafa, which no one likes. It was just terrible and a bad idea. When you think about it, the season for season 7 was just so short, only being 3 arcs to finalize it, and they completely missed out on the Crystal Crisis arc. And that arc is I watched it because you can find it on YouTube. There's just the unfinished version. I'd say it was a lot better than both of the first 2 arcs because like it actually provides feats for characters such as General Grievous, and then it does make him as bad as he is now. But I don't think it's considered canon since it's not actually part of the show and just a deleted scene. But I'll show you that right now.
General Grievous, I demand your surrender. I shall assume this means you're not going to surrender.
And then the Crystal Crisis arc I wouldn't say is anything special, just like a lot better than the first 2 arcs. Because because Bad Batch, since most people disagree, isn't that bad. I'll explain why more in detail. So, even though it's about autism clones, which is a bad theme, that doesn't mean it's bad. So what I think and why I think it's bad is that the Bad Batch basically are just superhumans, which does not make sense. And somehow even though they're all basically autism clones, they somehow find a way on how to work together and be a super team better than armies somehow, which makes no sense and is never explained. It's just that they're good, and then we're just supposed to agree with that. Basically, basically all Gary Stu's like Ray, if you think about it, because it's just that there's nothing that tells us why they're so good. We're just supposed to accept that the fact that they're so good, which is hard for me to agree with when I don't know why, but they just don't even cover that. And then my biggest issue is the fact that when Echo comes back and sees fives, and then I remember I don't okay, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. The line is along the lines of um I'm your friend and I'm always coming back for you. And then I always wonder about that scene. Why did Echo never ask about fives? Because that was his best friend. He's more friends with fives than he was with Rex, and you could tell that through the show. And it just really, I know it's a small thing, but I really get mad about that. Just because, how could he forget about five so easily? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, that's a personal issue. And then the episodes themselves, they seem to drag on even though they're short. Like the first episode was all right, but then the second episode was going to the place, and the third episode was escaping. And there's only one more episode left after that. I thought more would happen in that entire arc, but that's the Bad Batch, which covers two of the topics that were there. And then I'd say that there's even some flaws in like the best seasons. Like my favorite seasons, 5 and 6. They're great seasons overall, but there's some garbage episodes like the Padawan episode from season 5, and the episodes of Jar Jar Binks in season 6. But I mean, at least Jar Jar isn't as much in season 6 and 5 as he is in 1 and 2. But it's also not as bad as well, so I'll give them that. I feel like they just want to have Jar Jar, which I can't even get mad about. And then the last thing about Clone Wars is that Dave Filoni seems to get all the credit for the work that everyone else who worked on Clone Wars did. I feel like he gets more credit than the actors who played for the parts. And then he gets every single piece of credit, and then no credit goes to everyone who made the animation, voice acting, etc. And that's just one reason why I think Filoni isn't as good as people say, because people ignore the flaws and they give him all the credit for everything that was good. Even he even seems to get more credit than the actors for acting, or at least it feels like it. Next is Avatar, and I know that some people disagree, don't like this show, but I'd still say it's a great show, and Dave Filoni did a great job on the show. But I mean, it's he still seems to get all the credit. That's just my only gripe with with everything that Filoni makes, because it doesn't seem like any of the credit goes to anyone else. I don't have any real gripes with the show. I just brought it up here because it's brought up in the TikTok to prove that Dave Filoni isn't overrated, and their rebuttal. Now, next to the Mandalorian. And I do have a huge problem with this one because Dave Filoni didn't even work on the entire show. He didn't direct every episode, so you can't even say The Mandalorian is like, oh, it was all Dave Filoni. He only directed one episode, and it was arguably the worst episode of the entire show. So I don't want to hear it about Dave Filoni being good because he made the show. I mean, you could argue Clone Wars and Avatar, but not The Mandalorian because he made the worst episode, which was episode 5. It was the one where the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda go to Mos Eisley. And that one was just a filler episode with no real meaning, and it wasn't that engaging at all, really. I mean, it showed one Easter egg that could have been Boba, which some people speculate, but overall, it's not a great episode. And the Easter egg doesn't even make up for it, or the fact that they go to Mos Eisley. It's just a filler episode that doesn't even need to be watched, really. This next point was the nominees that Dave Filoni has gotten. And I mean, it's just nominees. It does. You don't really need to be that great to get them because they're not always going to be good. And it all it shows is that people like what he's did, and probably because he's popular, and that's why he got these nominees, not because not because he's good. Because there are some underrated directors who do deserve these. I'm not going to name some because I can't think of any off the top of my head right now. Now, Ahsoka is the next argument, And I still say that she's a great character, but not as good as everyone says, like Clone Wars and Filoni. It's just that Ahsoka isn't perfect because she never seems to get any criticism for anything, no matter how bad she is, except for seasons 1 and 2. But that's because seasons 1 and 2, which are pretty bad. But I mean, Ahsoka is a character who is a likable character, but people treat her like she's a goddess and like she's done no wrong, which I still can't agree with because there's some flaws in her character, and she's not interesting in everything. Like she was pretty boring to be honest in the arc where with the younglings from season 5. And honestly, I didn't really find much interest in her that much in season 7, to be honest, except for when Order 66 happened. Like in the entire sisters arcs, there's nothing redeeming about her. She's probably almost as bad as the sisters themselves. And even when they went to Mandalore, she didn't really have any character until she met Maul. Actually, no. And just the final arc is when she got character. But she definitely wasn't great in season 7 overall, and she wasn't great in seasons 1 and 2. I wouldn't even say season 3, but season 3 wasn't as bad as the first two. She only started to get character in season 4, and or I mean an interesting character instead of an annoying one, like Trace and Rafa. Now, Rebels, I'd argue, is an underrated show. I mean, it's not as good as Clone Wars in my opinion, but it still has some really good aspects in seasons 3 and 4. And I'd still say that Rebels' finales are better than Clone Wars. I mean, Clone Wars only had one finale, but I still like the Rebels finales better than Clone Wars because I don't know why, how, but the episode's finales are just really good in my opinion. I mean, the season 7 one was good, but I wouldn't say it was that good, especially the final episode. I mean, whenever you get to the final arc in Rebels, it's actually interesting, and I actually get excited for it, except for season 1. But even in season 2, when the show is doing garbage with the stupid helicopter lightsabers, I still like the final episode where Ahsoka fights off against Vader. And I'd say that Rebels overall is a really good show and has some aspects better than Clone Wars. It's just that once you get past the first 2 seasons, then it gets a lot better, and there's a lot of more enjoyable aspects from the show. Now for this picture, there's not really much I can say because there's not I need to say except Kathleen Kennedy has pictures of George Lucas. I know that everyone hates her like she's the devil, but I mean, it's not like there's anything special about this picture, which proves that Filoni's overrated. And I'd also like to point out that this guy decided to intentionally ignore Resistance because it's a garbage show, which would prove my point that Filoni's overrated. I mean, it's a kid show, but I still don't give that an excuse or a fair enough excuse for it being so bad. I watched the entire show, so I can tell you that the show was supposed to tie up loose ends for the sequel trilogy, but all it did was make more plot holes than it did when it came out. And it was kind of stupid overall as well. There was no redeeming elements for the show, and there's nothing that I liked about it at all. Even the Easter eggs are kind of stupid, and those episodes are garbage. The main character was annoying. The entire cast is annoying, except for Yeager. But I mean, he was a boring character overall. I don't ask this a lot, but I like to people to comment so they can hear, so I can hear their opinion on what they think of Clone Wars, and if I was a little bit too harsh and stuff like that. So please leave a comment just so I can debate with you. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I think I'm gonna do a second video on this, just about the comments from this TikTok, because it basically addressed all the major points for me to make this video a lot easier. So see you in the next one. Bye.